There's been a lot of speculation about if the former Impact Wrestling World Champion EC3 will be returning to Impact Wrestling, specifically at Slammiversary or just after. Of course, as I mentioned, EC3 is a former Impact Wrestling World Champion. He won the championship in 2015 and 2016, so he's a two-time champion with the company. And EC3's greatest success was with the company in his career. It's without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, you look back on who he was prior to going into Impact Wrestling. Prior to going into Impact Wrestling, he was Derek Bateman, whose best success was probably in NXT Season 4 with Daniel Bryan. And then, for whatever reason, he just floundered in WWE, didn't get even an opportunity to show what he was made of, didn't get an opportunity to show the personality that was there. We saw it when he was on NXT in the past, and he just never got that opportunity. Does that sound familiar, by the way, to his second run in WWE? It absolutely does, doesn't it? So he came into Impact Wrestling, had his best success with the company, became a real star and felt like a main event player, someone you could build the company around, someone that could be in main events. Fantastic on the mic. I mean, his in-ring skills are good, they're decent, but where he really shines is his personality, his promos, his vignettes, the interactions he was having with the likes of Rockstar Spud, Dixie Carter, and others. He was really that good on the mic in Impact Wrestling, and he came across as someone that could do big business on a bigger stage. He defeated the likes of Hall of Famers, Sting, Kurt Angle, beat Jeff Hardy, beat Matt Hardy, and amongst others. He was a real star in Impact Wrestling, and inside the world of Impact Wrestling, inside the world of TNA, he was a big deal. He was a main event player, he was a World Championship caliber athlete, a World Championship caliber superstar or wrestler in Impact Wrestling. He was a big deal. And coming off of this, I referenced it there a second ago, this horrible WWE run that he was previously a part of over the last few years. He needs to be a big deal again. He's 37 years old. He's coming into the prime years of a professional wrestler's career. You look at that, 37, 38 years, that's when you can really become a big star. You've honed your skills, you know what you have to do in the ring, you have this element of psychology that you might not have had a few years ago. It's time for him to be a big deal again. It's time for him to become a superstar once again, and it's time for him to become a world champion once again. Specifically, I think, in Impact Wrestling. I think that's the best place for EC3 to end up next. Now, he's been stirring up the pot a lot on his social media. We've all seen it. You know, control your narrative promos he's been doing. It's stirred up a lot of controversy, or maybe not controversy, but it got a lot of people talking this past week after AEW Fighter Fest went off the air. He did the AEW Control Your Narrative promo. He did, in that video, he made a lot of AEW puns, referenced the Alpha and Omega, talked about the Con, the Khan, referenced the Inner Circle, the Young Bucks, etc., etc. And it got a lot of people talking about whether or not he was going to go to AEW, which I don't think he will, because I think if you look and do a bit of a deeper dive on his social media profile and his social media posts since being released by WWE in April of this year, he's been making a lot of puns about a lot of companies. His whole thing and his whole gimmick at the moment is about controlling your narrative. He did a very similar promo or vignette, whatever you want to call it, that he posted on his social media page prior to the AEW promo, which was about Ring of Honor, saying there's no honor in what we do. That was the big tagline in that promo. There's no honor in what we do. We need to bring back honor in professional wrestling. And then at the end, flashed up, similar to how the AEW logo flashed up at the end of the AEW promo, the Ring of Honor logo flashed up at the end of the There Is No Honor in What We Do promo. So EC3 is just getting people talking. Where is EC3 going to end up next? That's what he's really trying to do. But I think it's pretty obvious that he's going back to Impact Wrestling. That's the best destination for him. That's the one that's been teased the most without him doing the Control Your Narrative promo on Impact Wrestling. His music, in fact, actually played on an episode of Impact Wrestling a few weeks ago. TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose, he won a match, and then after the match, instead of Moose's music playing, it was EC3's music that played instead. Moose was confused, he sold the look of shock, what is going on? The announcers, Josh Matthews, was confused, what is going on? This only played for maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and then Moose's theme played and we go out to the next segment. That was a little hint, I think, of what's to come when it comes to EC3 coming back to Impact Wrestling. Now, Impact, even prior to teasing EC3's music on the show, had actually been teasing a bunch of WWE release stars, ex-WWE stars that were released in April of this year, Black Wednesday, after WrestleMania. They've been teasing a lot of stars for Slammiversary in that now famous, infamous promo, I don't know what you want to call it, with the newscaster talking about names that had been released. And one of those names and one of the faces shown during that vignette, during that promo, was EC3 himself, the former Impact Wrestling World Champion. Now, ever since the EC3 music interruption, TNA World Heavyweight Champion, the real World Champion Moose, has been taking shots at EC3 on social media. Since Impact Rebellion, of course, now this is important, I think, to backtrack a bit. Since Impact Rebellion, Moose has appeared with the old TNA World Heavyweight Championship title in the design of, I believe it's from 2011 to 2017? I believe it's around that period of time. And he declared himself the new TNA World Heavyweight Champion. He defeated Hernandez and Michael Elgin, called himself the real world champion, and sort of facilitated this embracing the past and embracing the history of TNA inside Impact Wrestling, which Impact Wrestling have been teasing for quite a while now. Now, Moose has since made title defenses for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. He made a title defense on May 12th, the edition of Impact, defeating Suicide. He also successfully defended the title against Hernandez and Crazy Steve in singles matches. So he's really building himself up as, I'm the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, I'm the real World Champion. Forget about the Impact World Championship. The TNA World Heavyweight Championship is the real World Championship. I've really enjoyed this storyline. I think I'm just, because I'm a wrestling mark and I'm a wrestling historian, whenever they bring something back from the past, I'm letting it rest a few years. Regardless of your thoughts about what TNA was back in the day and how horribly mismanaged it was, and the bounce checks and just the horrible legal confusion that's gone on over the years with TNA, there were high spots when it comes to TNA, without a doubt, and there are fond memories when it comes to TNA, the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, some of the pay-per-views, some of the gimmicks, some of the matches, especially in the early days. So I really have enjoyed this embracing the past element when it comes to Impact Wrestling. Now, Moose has even mocked EC3 directly now. It's not even been the subtle digs. It's been real direct mocking by Moose on social media. He even mocked and parodied EC3's Control Your Narrative online vignettes by making one of his own. It was shot exactly the same, almost as if it was shot in the exact same building by the exact same people. Could that people, in fact, be Impact Wrestling? And now, in the promo, he has even called out EC3 by name. He showed an image of EC3 on the screen. And when EC3 was the Impact World Champion, or at the time the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, he indeed had the very same TNA World Heavyweight Championship bout design. So there's something there. There's a story there that could be told. Now, as I mentioned previously, Impact Wrestling have been teasing this. We're bringing back TNA concept for quite a while. Even as far back, I believe it's like February or March time. It was planned for WrestleMania weekend. TNA or Impact Wrestling were going to run a show around WrestleMania weekend that was essentially a TNA throwback event. They had the Aces and Eights coming back. They had Chris Sabin, Mr. Anderson, some other TNA originals coming back and doing the show. I think like Disco Inferno was going to come back as well, maybe. Some real deep cuts and deep throwbacks they were going to do. Obviously, that event didn't happen due to the pandemic that we're still going through. But the concept of Moose bringing back the TNA World Heavyweight Championship and calling himself the real world champion, embracing this TNA past in Impact Wrestling, I think is this continuation of bringing back TNA, embracing the past, embracing your history. I've mentioned it before here that the most valuable thing sometimes, Impact Wrestling I think is better funded than they have been for a long time. Maybe not the money they had back in the day, but maybe even more. Maybe they're just a bit more conservative about how they spend it. But one of the most valuable things about Impact Wrestling is their history at this point. They've been around since 2002, 18 years. They've got 18 years worth of footage, worth of history, worth of matches, worth of events. They've had the last matches of Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Randy Savage, some of the last matches of Mick Foley, some of the last matches of Sting. I know Sting had a couple in WWE. The bulk of Kurt Angle's career, obviously Kurt Angle started off in WWE, but he spent more time in Impact Wrestling and arguably had better matches in Impact Wrestling. You've got Kevin Nash there. You've got some big stars that have had matches, had moments. I believe they had the last televised match of Kurt Hennig and some others. They've got all of this history in their tape library and in their archives, it makes no sense almost not to use it at this point. When you've got this history, they've obviously got the streaming service Impact Plus, but it makes a lot of sense for them to bring that onto their television program, or at least for a storyline. Creatively, I think it'd be really satisfying to have them bring back this history of TNA and embrace that past of TNA. TNA for a while, of course, was a very violated brand because of the last few years of the Dixie Carter era and some of the Vince Russo moments and the bounce checks and the legal battles with Billy Corgan, all of that stuff. And it took time, I guess, for that brand to die down a little bit. Let the heat die off of that. Now that you haven't seen it for a while, there's definitely, from my point of view anyway, a fondness of bringing it back and doing this storyline and embracing your heritage slightly. And I think that's really fun. And I think Moose having the TNA World Heavyweight Championship is just a continuation of this, embracing the past and bringing back TNA. So I think TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose feuding with a former TNA World Heavyweight Champion in EC3 looks like the direction in which they are going in, and to me it makes the most sense, and it's something I'm certainly interested in seeing. I think it'd be a lot of fun to mix up and have a hybrid of modern day Impact Wrestling and have a hybrid of TNA's past, have them feud over the TNA World Heavyweight Championship as opposed to the Impact World Heavyweight Championship, and reintroduce EC3 in a fun and different way. Have EC3 control his narrative not only by how he's booked, but almost embracing the past as well. I think that would be really interesting and fun. Now, some people are saying as well, won't EC3 be the fourth guy in the Impact World Championship match at Slammiversary? There is certainly a possibility in this. Now, he could easily be the fourth guy in the Fatal 4-Way match for the vacant Impact World Championship at Slammiversary, but I'm not sure. Of course, in Slammiversary, we've got Ace Austin versus Eddie Edwards versus Trey versus a mystery fourth competitor for the Impact World Championship. But I think there are other guys it could be as well. I don't think EC3 is a complete lock to be the fourth guy at Slammiversary. You've got other free agents that have been teased: Eric Young, Super Eric, Heath Slater, Zack Ryder, Kurt Hawkins, maybe even Rusev. I don't think he'll be Rusev. I think he'll go to AEW if and when he decides to get back into wrestling, but it could be him. Who knows? It would certainly make a massive impact, pun intended, if Impact Wrestling managed to pull that deal off. Now, as of this recording right now, Moose isn't booked for a match for Slammiversary as yet. You can almost guarantee he's going to be involved in the show somehow, and he might have a match soon to be announced, but he isn't booked for Slammiversary as of yet. So it could even be Moose being the mystery fourth competitor in the Impact Wrestling World Championship Fatal 4-Way match. Maybe Moose tries to become both the TNA World Heavyweight Champion and the Impact World Champion, calls himself the real World Champion, but then we have the eventual return of EC3, maybe even at Slammiversary, returns, costs him the match, and then you have the Moose versus EC3 feud for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. Maybe they could do it like that. Maybe at Slammiversary we just have a Moose segment of complaining that the real World Champion hasn't been booked, the TNA World Heavyweight Champion hasn't even been booked for one of the biggest shows that Impact Wrestling is going to put on this year, calling himself the real World Champion, and then he gets interrupted by a returning EC3. There's lots of different ways that they can do this, and there's lots of different fun ways I think they can do this and have some really compelling and interesting television. I don't think they need to do the exact obvious thing here. I think a Moose versus EC3 feud over the TNA World Heavyweight Championship as they continue to bring back TNA. I don't think TNA is going to come back and replace Impact Wrestling or anything at that point, but I certainly think they could almost make a second brand here. I'm not going to say that Impact Wrestling should do a brand split or anything like that, but if they wanted to expand, maybe have another show on Access TV. Impact does very well on Access TV, and Anthem, the people that own Impact Wrestling and Access TV, are very, very happy with it and very, very happy with the product they're putting out. Impact Wrestling has been very good for the last few years now. This goes back to, gosh, all the way to at least 2017, 2018, I believe, ever since Anthem bought Impact Wrestling, and it's very difficult to say because I'm not really sure the Jeff Jarrett era was the best era of Impact Wrestling, far from it, but ever since Don Callis and Scott D'Amore have come in, I think Impact Wrestling has been really fun to watch, and a lot of fans who have been watching for that long know just that. So I think if Access wanted to do a second Impact Wrestling show and just call it TNA, you've got two separate entities there, right? You've got Impact Wrestling, you've got TNA. Impact Wrestling as a brand has grown so much, and TNA obviously has all the history there. So there's a lot that they could do here, and I think a feud between EC3 and Muse would be a perfect way of kickstarting this. Having the aces and eights come back as well. It's a very fun time, isn't it, for Impact Wrestling at the moment? It's a very interesting time for Impact Wrestling at the moment. I think with everything that's been going on with the pandemic and with everything that's been going on in the chaos in the pro wrestling industry at the moment, I think Impact Wrestling have done a phenomenal job in managing it and actually maybe coming out of this better off, which is pretty astounding when you think about it. A lot of people are talking about Impact Wrestling right now for the first time in a very long time. Obviously, like I said, the product's been good for a few years now, but people are genuinely talking about Impact Wrestling as, I'm interested to see what's going to happen next, and I'm interested to see what they're going to do next. Now, are they going to compete with an AEW and a WWE in the ratings? No. But if you can have a niche product that people are invested about and people are caring about and people want to see, that's as good as Impact Wrestling can do right now, and I think they're doing a pretty good job. So either way, I think we're going to get a Moose versus EC3 feud as EC3's first feud back in Impact Wrestling. Whether that will be over the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, whether EC3 will be the Impact World Champion as soon as he comes through the door, maybe even Moose will become the Impact World Champion as he is the mystery fourth guy at Slammiversary. There's a lot of unanswered questions here, but I think it's a very interesting time and I'm certainly looking forward to it. But of course, what are your opinions on a potential Moose versus EC3 feud as EC3's first feud back in Impact Wrestling? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Who do you think is going to be the mystery fourth competitor at Slammiversary in that Impact World Championship match? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Like I just said, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms on the screen right now. That's at 365Wrestle on Twitter and at WrestleNews365 on Facebook and Instagram. Be sure to like, share and subscribe to WrestleNews365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak with you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.